So, if you watch this channel for long enough, you will know that I am a huge Sebastien Loeb fan. Along with the Colin McRae rally games, which I used to play a lot as a kid, Loeb was the main reason I became a massive fan of WRC. The first rally I ever watched was the 2004 Swedish rally, which just happened to be the rally where Loeb became the first non-Scandinavian to win that rally. From that point on, I became a Loeb fan, and given I started watching WRC in 2004, it meant I got to witness every title win Loeb achieved, with him going on a 9-year streak of him winning the title, with no one seemingly having an answer to stop him. However, it's fair to say that even though I am a Loeb fan, that his dominance was one of the reasons why people started tuning off to WRC, and one could make the argument that even Loeb got bored of winning so much. So it would come as a surprise when on the 3rd of October 2012, it was announced that Loeb would retire from full-time competition in the WRC at the end of the 2012 season, with him switching to a part-time schedule in 2013, whilst also doing some other events outside the WRC as well, such as the Pikes Peak Hill Climb, where for 5 years he would hold the record for the fastest ever time around the course, competing in a round of the European Rallycross Championship, a discipline he would take up full-time a few years down the line, and also dabbing his hand at circuit racing, such as the Porsche Super Cup, which is a support category for Formula 1, and most notably, a full-time crack at the FIA GT series, driving a McLaren MP4 12C GT3 car, which he ended up finishing 4th in the championship, picking up 4 wins that year, along with his co-pilot Alvaro Parente. All of these events that he was doing in 2013 was the getting prepared for a huge project that was coming up for him in 2014. During 2013, specifically in June, it was announced that Citroen, the manufacturer that Loeb drove for to win his 9 World Rally titles, would be entering the World Touring Car Championship in 2014, with the French manufacturer later announcing that they would be using the CLEC to compete in the series. For their first year, the team would have 3 full-time drivers competing for them, along with a driver who would take part in selected rounds, which would end up being former Hispania test driver Marc Engloire. As for the 3 full-time drivers, they ended up hiring 2003 WTCC champion Ivan Muller, who moved over from the departed Ray Mallet Limited Chevrolet team, Jose Maria Lopez, who after impressing in his one-off appearance with Weech's Sport the previous year, would end up being signed to Citroen on a full-time basis. And joining both Muller and Lopez as the 3rd full-time driver would be, as you guessed it, Sebastien Loeb, who after a successful stint in the FIA GT Championship would reunite with Citroen on the circuit racing scene. Loeb spent 2 years in the World Touring Car Championship, and whilst he wouldn't win the championship during those 2 years, his stint would still be memorable. Let's take a look at his time in the WTCC. The first race of the 2014 season took the WTCC fraternity to the Marrakesh street circuit in Morocco. A lot of intrigue, as you might imagine, wasn't just on the Citroen team, but also Sebastien Loeb and how he would get on. And it's safe to say, Loeb and Citroen started their first ever weekend with a bang, as in their first ever qualifying session, Citroen had grabbed their first ever pole position, courtesy of Jose Maria Lopez, while Sebastien Loeb in his first ever qualifying session managed to get his Citroen on the front row, ensuring a front row lockout, whilst Ivan Muller was a row behind in 4th, with Tom Chilton in the Rail Motorsport Chevrolet preventing the Citroens from making a 1-2-3 on the grid. And with the top 5 qualifiers getting points, it meant Loeb grabbed his first ever points in WTCC and was looking to build on that in race 1. And build on that he would, as after maintaining P2 at the start, whilst reigning champion Muller got the jump on Chilton to move up to 3rd, the Citroens pulled away from the rest of the pack and would remain close to each other right until the finish. Lopez would grab the first win of the season, whilst in his first ever race, Loeb would grab his first ever podium with 2nd, being 0.7 seconds behind Lopez. Overall, a great start to his time in WTCC. However, if you thought race 1 was a success for Loeb, race 2 would be even better. Starting from P9, as a result of the top 10 qualifiers being reversed, Loeb got a lightning start to dump Chilton at the start, but had to take avoiding action after teammate Muller got caught up in an incident involving Mehdi Banani, who was lucky to keep going, and Tom Coronel, whose race was over. Loeb made his way up to third before the red flag was brought out in response to the incident. Once the race restarted, Loeb set his sights chasing down the two Castrol Hondas. First was Thiago Monteiro, who a lap later, Loeb was able to dispose by outbraking him around the outside at turn 1 to move up to second. Then on the following lap, Loeb would then dispose of Bernani down the long back straight to take the lead of the race. From that point on, Loeb would build a gap out in front, helped also by Bernani receiving a drive-through penalty for the start crash with Tom Coronel. And despite the fact that Lopez was able to dispose of Monteiro to move up to second, there was nothing he could do to close the gap on Loeb. And so, coming out of the final corner on the last lap, Loeb would come through in only his second touring car race to take his first ever WTCC win and his first with Citroen outside of WRC. It was an amazing achievement for Loeb and one that proved that he could win outside of a rally car and without any co-pilots like in the FIA GT series. The following meeting at Loeb's home race at Paul Ricard was also a strong one for Seb, as despite being excluded from qualifying due to a technical infringement with his fuel load, he would climb his way back through the order in both races, with him getting his third consecutive podium in race 1 with P2, which saw him briefly take the lead in the standings, and then followed that by a 6th place finish in race 2, unable to continue his podium streak. And he wouldn't get a podium at the following meeting at the Hungaroring, as despite qualifying third, he would drop down to 7th in the race due to a lack of pace, and would then struggle again in race 2, finishing down in 9th place. But then at the next meeting at the Slovakia Ring, Loeb's luck would thankfully change in a big way. Taking advantage of Muller bogging down at the start in wet conditions, Loeb would assume the lead from second on the grid, and using his wet weather ability that he adopted during his time in the WRC, he was able to keep it on the island. And with the race finishing a few laps early due to the conditions getting worse, Loeb was awarded with his second ever win to put his championship back on track and move up to second ahead of Muller in the standings. Because of the worsening conditions, it led to race 2 being cancelled, meaning Loeb was the only victor from the Slovakia Ring that weekend. Sadly for Loeb, he wouldn't get another win that season and would only pick up 4 more podiums, all of which were third places. This, as a result, prevented him from challenging his 2 full-time teammates for the title, but thanks to the dominance of Citroen that year, he was able to finish the championship in third, finishing every race that year and also scoring points in all but one race, which was at race 2 in Shanghai, where he finished down in 12th due to a 30-second time penalty that he was given following a collision with teammate Muller. Overall, a very good rookie season, and he would look to build on that in 2015 as he would once again remain at Citroen, again partnered by Lopez and Muller, with Marching-Hua becoming a full-time driver as well, meaning there would be 4 Citroen Works cars on the grid. So let's see how that season panned out. Unlike 2014, the first meeting of the 2015 season would take place at the Rio Hondo circuit in Argentina, which is the same track that MotoGP go to for their Argentine Grand Prix, until their government had other plans. The season kicked off where it left off in 2014, as Citroen once again came out of the gates with a dominant car, leading home a 1-2-3 finish, with Loeb taking the final step of the podium behind his teammates of Lopez and Muller. But just like the previous season, Loeb would have an even better race 2 in the opening meeting, as after starting down in 8th, he would get a lightning start to move up to 5th, and then would be second by the end of the first lap behind teammate Marching-Hua. He would then grab the lead from Ma on the following lap, taking advantage of a mistake from the Chinese driver. And from that point, Loeb wouldn't look back, as despite a safety car period allowing the pack to bunch up, Loeb would blast away at the restart to take a dominant victory ahead of teammate Lopez, giving him his third WTCC win. He would then continue that form into Marrakesh, picking up another 2 podiums, with a 3rd place in race 1 and a 2nd place in race 2 to keep him within touching distance of Lopez in the standings after 2 meetings. But he would once again struggle at the Hungaroring, as he would once again fail to record a podium, with him finishing 6th and 5th respectively, suggesting that his race pace might not suit the twisty nature of the Hungaroring compared to his qualifying pace. Then came the first ever WTCC meeting at the 24-hour layout of the Nürburgring, combining the Grand Prix and Nordschleife layouts in support of the Nürburgring 24-hour event that was also taking place that weekend. With the circuit being very long and demanding, you would think in theory that given Loeb's background in rallying that he would have gone strong around there. Well, in race 1, that did appear to be the case, as after jumping Hugo Valenti at the start from 3rd on the grid, he would maintain a very good pace throughout the 3 laps around the Nürburgring 24-hour layout to finish 2nd to teammate Lopez. Race 2, however, was a different story, as after starting in 6th, he would gain 1 place in the race to finish 5th, but did end up being the highest placed Citroen driver in that race to keep ahead of Muller in the standings. But despite this, he was still 50 points off his reigning champion teammate Jose Maria Lopez. Next up was Moscow Raceway, and just like at the Hungaroring, Loeb once again struggled, finishing down in 9th in race 1 and then finishing 7th in race 2. Although to be fair, race 2 wasn't exactly the best of races for Citroen as a whole. This, as a result, saw Loeb drop down to 3rd in the standings behind teammate Muller, whilst Lopez continued to pull away from Loeb. But then, at the Slovakia ring, Loeb would bounce back from being in the wilderness at Moscow Raceway, as he would grab a 3rd place finish in race 1, and then in race 2, after getting a lightning start from 8th on the grid to move up to 2nd, would then grab the lead from Gabriele Tarquini on the 3rd lap to take his 2nd victory of the season, comfortably followed by his teammates Lopez, Muller and Marr. Then, at the following meeting at Paul Ricard, Loeb would grab his first ever pole position and would convert the pole into the win, making it 2 wins in a row for the 9-time World Rally Champion. But whilst he would grab his first ever pole, he would also grab another first that weekend, as sadly for Loeb in race 2, he would pick up his first ever retirement in the series after collecting a tyre barrier at the exit of turn 1, damaging his front left suspension in the process. He would bounce back with a 2nd place finish in race 1 at the Villarreal Street Circuit in Portugal, but would then crash out in race 2 after a collision with Nicky Katzberg and Norman Michelis. Despite this though, he would still be classified in 15th as a result of completing 75% of the race distance. After a 6th and 4th place finish at Motegi, he would follow that with a top 4 finish in the next 2 meetings, including a win in race 2 at Buriram in Thailand. But with the championship already wrapped up, with Lopez retaining his crown from 2014, Loeb had a chance of taking the runners-up spot away from his fellow compatriot Ivan Muller at the final meeting at Losail in Qatar. Sadly though, this wouldn't happen, as 2 4th place finishes in both races, combined with Muller winning the final race of the season, saw Loeb miss out on the runners-up spot by just 1 point and would once again finish 3rd in the standings, grabbing just over 60 more points than the previous year. With an improved season compared to 2014, the hope was that Loeb would try and beat Muller in the standings and try and get close to Jose Maria Lopez in 2016. Sadly though, he wouldn't get a chance to do that, as with Citroen reducing their entry to a 2-car team in 2016, it was announced just a few weeks before the finale at Losail that Loeb would not only be leaving the World Touring Car Championship, but he would also be leaving Citroen altogether, bringing to an end a 15-year partnership. And so, that was that. After so much promise throughout the 2 years competing with the ever-dominant Citroen team, Sebastien Loeb's time in World Touring Cars was already over. So overall, was Loeb's time in World Touring Cars a success? Well, given what I have titled this video, I would say so. Now, yes, he didn't win a title during his 2 years in the series, but I don't think that really matters when you take into context Loeb's background in motorsport. After conquering the world of rallying for nearly a decade, Loeb proved during his time on the racetrack, whether that was in the FIA GT series or even World Touring Cars, which was the main focus of this video, that he could compete and challenge for wins no matter what discipline of motorsport he took part in. Although he has never taken part in motorcycle racing, and I highly doubt he would now given his age. Plus I don't know if he rides a bike in his spare time or not. I'll look that up before I post this video and put the answer up on your screen. The only thing I would say that was a letdown during his time in World Touring Cars is the fact that his time in the series ended too soon. Given his 2015 season was a massive improvement compared to 2014 in that he was able to get close to Muller in the standings, it does make me wonder, had Loeb continued on in World Touring Cars for at least a few more years, would his pace have progressed even further? And if so, would he have had the pace in the end to fight for the title? Sadly, we never got that answer, and given Citroen ended up pulling out of World Touring Cars at the end of 2016, before the manufacturer ended up disappearing altogether after 2017 as a result of Seb's racing team acquiring the cars for that year, it would have been a short time frame to see if he could have won in a Citroen. Plus, combined with the fact that the series ended up folding at the end of 2022, after the series was rebranded to WTCR in 2018 due to the series adopting the TCR regulations, that would have also have given Loeb a short time frame to try and win a title, even if it was without Citroen. But either way, Loeb's time in the series is still memorable, and the fact that he was able to compete against drivers who had done circuit racing for pretty much most of their careers shows what an amazing talent Loeb was and still is to this day. And that is why he is the GOAT, everyone. I had to fit that in somewhere, didn't I?